Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask everyone to take their seats, please.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural meeting of the 2021 newly elected Council for the City of St. John. Tonight is particularly important as it marks the first time a land acknowledgement will be read at the Council meeting of the City of St. John. I wish to recognize that the Honourable Graydon Nicholas, his wife, the first Indigenous Lieutenant Governor for the province of New Brunswick, is joining us in the Council chambers this evening, and he has graciously agreed to honour us with the first reading of the land acknowledgement, which he helped draft, and for which the City is grateful. Also joining us in the chambers are the founding members of Eastern Circle in St. John, Cassandra McLaughlin, Michaela Spinney, and Kateri Hibert. Ms. Spinney has generously agreed to perform a smudging ceremony for us this evening and to sing the honour song as well. Before we get started, I invite the General Counsel, Melanie Tompkins, to make an offering to our guests on behalf of the City. Melanie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Honourable Graydon Nicholas, on behalf of the City of St. John, I offer you this white sage for a reading of a land acknowledgement and for your guidance and wisdom regarding National Aboriginal Peoples' Day upcoming on 2024. I invite Jacqueline Boucher from our office to make an offering to Ms. Spinney.
Ms. Spinney, on behalf of the City of St. John, I offer you this white sage and request for you to perform a smudging ceremony as well as the honour song tonight. So I'll now turn over to Ms. Spinney. At the request of the founding members of Eastern Circle, we would request that no one video or take photographs during the smudging ceremony. Thank you.
Well, first of all, good evening, Your Worship, and the councillors who have been selected by your citizens of your city here to be their representative voices. And my wife is with me this evening. Of course, she's St. John born from the North End. And I also want to thank my sisters who came here and did the smudging ceremony, which is very significant in my culture because it asks the Creator to help us so that the words that come out of our mouths will be good, so that the ears will listen to what somebody else is saying without judgment, so that our hearts will be open to others as well. And also to make sure that when we speak well. And so tonight, I have the privilege of, in fact, reading the land acknowledgement for your city here. And I'm doing that, of course, holding an eagle feather. Eagle feather, of course, eagle is very significant in the culture of my people. So this is to acknowledge that land on which the city of St. John, Monaquesk, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik or Maliseet. The Wolastoqiyik and Maliseet, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq, and the Passamaquoddy, Pesquotamati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. So this is my very first involvement with the municipal government to be able to read this acknowledgement. So you are ahead of many other municipalities within our province. I just want to ask you also a few more information. I know time is limited, but I just wanted to give you some information. Number one is when the province of New Brunswick was created in 1784 by the issuance of a letter of patent, the Royal Commission and instructions issued to Governor Carleton and published November 22nd, 1784 in section 63 indicated, and I'll quote, "And whereas it is highly necessary for our service and for you that you should cultivate and maintain a strict friendship and good correspondence with the Indians inhabiting within our said province of New Brunswick, that they may be induced by degree not only to be good neighbors to our subjects, to us, but likewise themselves to become good subjects to us. You are therefore to use all proper means to obtain those ends, to have interviews from time to time with the several heads of the Indian nations or clans, and to endeavor to enter into treaty with them, promising them friendship and protection on our part." So this is part of our history in our province. Not only that, of course, as many of you know, a treaty was signed on September 24th, 1778, at the harbor here in St. John, where there was a big meeting that took place near Fort Howe. And part of that treaty states as follows: on behalf of my ancestors, I do promise that I will not take part directly or indirectly against the King in the troubles now subsisting between Great Britain and His Majesty's rebellious subjects of America, but that I will follow my hunting and fishing in a peaceful and quiet manner. So this quote then is one of those peace and friendship treaties that I referred to earlier in the land acknowledgement. And I just wanted to let you know, I'll give this, by the way, to your councillor here, Ms. Tompkins, just some days that are coming up that are significant for my people and all Indigenous peoples in this province. On June 21st, next Monday, will be the celebration of National Indigenous Day. This has been going on in Canada for quite a while now, in which we give honor for the heritage of this country and the contributions of Indigenous people across this great land. September 30th has just been declared a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation by the Senate and the House of Commons, but it's also the day designated as Orange Shirt Day, which has its own history. October 1st is the treaty day for the Mi'kmaq, because the Treaty of 1752 was signed in Halifax and it was to be renewed on October 1st of each year. October is also the month of what we call the Red Dress Campaign. And this Red Dress Campaign is to honor those Indigenous women and children who were missing. And we know there's a study that's been done. November 8th is National Indigenous Veterans Day, separate from November 11th. December 12th is the National Day of Prayer and Solidarity with Indigenous Peoples. June 4th is the Treaty Day of the Wolastoqiyik, my ancestors and my people. The whole month of June is called Indigenous History Month. So I just wanted to, I guess, because my background is as a teacher, I like to enlighten people or remind them maybe of what they already know. But repetition is good. So again, Your Worship, councillors, and the City of St. John, of which my wife and I are a part of your city because we have a condo at Wentworth. So thank you very much. I'm deeply honored to be here, and thank you very much for your gifts that you have offered to us and to my sisters here as well. In my language, I'll say Waliwan, thank you, and of course en français also, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Gosh. On behalf of the City of St. John, I thank you for honoring us this evening and for agreeing to participate in this historic event for the City of St. John. Thank you for the history lesson as well. Thank you for the beautiful singing as well. I invite members of council and the public to please stand and pause for a minute of silence to recognize this important event. Sorry. Now I invite you to all remain standing and join us in the playing of the national anthem, please.
I just did it.
City Manager, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ladies and gentlemen, members of council, during this past week, the City of St. John employee group lost one of its own, Captain Conrad from the St. John Fire Department. Passed away in what WorkSafe New Brunswick has now officially confirmed as a line of duty death. Captain Conrad was a consummate professional, always good-humored, a religious man, and put simply, an individual with an exceptional soul. He will be missed. Earlier this afternoon was his celebration of life, and he will now be put to rest. I would ask that you join me in a moment of silence in solemn recognition of Captain Carl Conrad.
Thank you again for coming. You're certainly welcome to leave, but I have to say that we've made my first night on the job exceptional and historic, so thank you. All right. All right, we'll call up the first item, please. Jonathan?
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on the agenda is item 2.1. It's approval of May the 17th minutes of Common Council.
Okay, mover and a seconder, I'll call the question. All in favor? Against? Thank you.
Next item, Your Worship, approval of the agenda.
Okay, all right, we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Contrary? Thank you.
Next item is item 4 on your agenda, disclosures of conflict of interest, if any council members have a disclosure.
Okay, no disclosures of conflict of interest.
I have a possible conflict, 5.4.
Okay. That it? Okay, I'll move on.
And Your Worship, next item is the consent agenda. And if council will recall, this would be approved as one motion for all items. Therefore, if there are any items where a councillor has a conflict, such as item 5.4, that should be removed.
Your Worship, I have in 5.1, 5.3, 5.5, 5.12 inclusive, and pulling 5.4, so it has correct.
Remove as necessary.
Thank you. I have a seconder on that motion. Second by Councillor McKenzie. All right, on the question, any questions?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I have to get my paperwork over here. All right. Oh, right, I've got it. All right, Councillor Harris, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question about 5.10, Microsoft Business. Can somebody explain the part on that outlines the supporting document? I'm seeing we've got some. We don't have a tender out. We have something from Soft Point, so I'm just wondering if there's any.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Yeah.
Over to you, Councillor Fudge, please. Or Councillor Fudge. CFO Fudge.
Through you, Your Worship. So the city had entered into a 3-year agreement with Microsoft under its old platform prior to the cyber event. And we were leveraging a provincial agreement when we had done so back in June of 2020. So Microsoft is eventually transitioning away from their platform that we were on and moving forward to Microsoft 365, which is something that we've migrated to sooner than we planned. So with that, when we experienced the cyber attack in November, we were forced to accelerate the Microsoft 365 product from what we were previously assuming we were going to be using on the old platform with the agreement we had signed, the 3-year agreement. So with that, Microsoft 365 comes with basic security features, but we needed enhanced security features. But because we were mobilizing very quickly to address the cyber event, we needed those features sooner than waiting for another renewal with Microsoft. So we received those features through a month-to-month agreement with Bulletproof as part of our restoration process. Now that we have this annual renewal, still through the provincial standing agreement before you tonight, we'll be able to receive those same enhanced security features, but for $124,000 a year less than we would be continuing on a month-to-month, basis with the Bulletproof contract. So we're asking Microsoft to include this enhanced feature onto the agreement we already have as part of the annual renewal that's coming up.
Thank you so much. Councillor Hickey, you're up next, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple questions. First one, 5.3 is pedestrian easement for pedestrian access in favor of 50 Princess Street. Just a quick question. It's unfamiliar for me to allow those easements to contain barrier construction as well within those. Could someone just clarify that for me?
Councilor Hickey?
The voice of God.
That was not my voice. I apologize for that. I wonder if Mr. Brian Irving is on.
That must have been Brian.
Yeah, sorry about that, Councilor. Could you repeat the question, please, sir?
Yeah, of course, Brian. It mentions the addition of those 2 extra doors alongside that 3rd door, and then it talks about building barriers along that easement. I'm just unfamiliar with having having them build barriers on just an easement where it's not actually their property. I'm curious as to the parameters around that is all.
Through your worship, the parking stall is currently abut up against the rear of the building at 50 Princess Street. And so the notion of the pedestrian egress along the south side of the building, the rear of the building to Canterbury, is really just seeking protection for that lane to remain open. So bollards, I believe, at the doors so they don't get pinned in, and then parking barricades that precludes the parking stalls from encroaching up against the back of the building.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And 5.6, Brent, I can assume you know what I'm going to ask here. Can you talk about the idea of complete streets behind this proposal? And I don't see bike lanes included in it. Is there can you just talk me through the plan there?
Sure, through you, your worship. So with respect to the renewal of streets, when we do this now, it's done in accordance with the plans that have been approved by council, have been before council and approved by council. So when we look to, for example, the secondary plan of the Central Peninsula, it does not identify this corridor as one that would have a bike lane, for example. So with respect to the Move SJ plan, I know Commissioner Hugenholtz could speak to that more in terms of the larger vision and as it ties in the network of active transportation in the Uptown corridor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Just as in regards to the transportation plan and more specifically the cycling strategy, we are, of course, in the process of finalizing that strategy. So council would have considered the draft strategy back last year, and subsequently we've undertaken a process of public consultation, stakeholder consultation, and in the upcoming months we'll be taking that back to council for adoption. I can say that as it regards the South Central Peninsula, St. James Street is not identified as a strategic corridor or a bike lane. So we do intentionally select a network. So we don't, include each and every street in that. We look at, we consider factors like connectivity of various areas, population, employment density, and we try to link key destinations and develop strategic corridors in which we want to drive that cycling traffic. So in the South Central Peninsula, those corridors would include basically the Lower Cove Loop, so Water Street, Crown, Broad, looping around the peninsula. Would also include Union Street, as well as some cycling facilities on Charlotte and Sydney streets. But not every city in not every street in the city does require separate cycling facilities. So that's our plan, and I would really encourage council to see the final strategy and adopt that as the work plan for advancing additional cycling infrastructure in the city. Developing or making decisions on a block-by-block basis is not likely to result in a good, comprehensive network of cycling facilities.
No, I completely understand that, Mike. I bring it up to talk holistically about how we envision our streets and complete streets. And, I see even in this case, the addition of that of that grassed section in between the sidewalk and the road will be instrumental in changing the streetscape on St. James Street. It's obvious now. You can look down that street and not see a single tree the whole way down the street, and it's stark and it's obvious, and it plays to the condition of the community as well. So the more we can make efforts to see changes like that, to change those streetscapes, is huge. So thank you very much, and excited for that finalized strategy.
All right, Councillor Radwan, please.
I have a question. It's the same question for 5.1, 5.2, and 5.7, and it's just in regards to the language in the lease agreement. And I know that it's usually fairly common to have some sort of language that discusses the way that grease is going to be taken from the facility. So sometimes, for example, in a food industry, they would have regular routine companies coming to get rid of the grease from the cooking facility. Other times they would end up having a barrel outside, and then it would be taken out every so often. There is language in there that discusses the removal of debris, and I'm not sure if that covers that or if there's somewhere else that it's kind of covering anything like that. I just wanted some clarification.
Your Worship, I'll just say the licensee would be responsible for what happens on the licensed lands, and the licensee must carry insurance for whatever problems. I think the debris are not intended to cover that which you speak of, but I invite again Mr. Irving to pipe in. I think it's just the licensee is responsible for what takes place on the licensed lands, and if there are health or other regulations that must be complied with, that's up to the licensee to comply with. But Mr. Irving, if you're still on the screen.
Sorry about that. It appears that the license doesn't deal specifically with that. The notion was that these are licenses to operate and sell, and that there would be no ability for them to store used cooking materials on site and they're to be changed out. So it really should just be the operation alone, and no residual equipment or gear outside of the facility. So it's mobile and it should be all self-contained.
Thank you, Mr. Irving. Councillor Norton.
Through you to the city manager, as it relates to 5.12 ABCs, just with a new council, is it possible that communications or somehow through your office we can hit the refresh or advertise those vacancies? I mean, we've got 8 ABCs that have tremendous linkages with the city, whether it be financial or operational, and having how do I put it? Refreshing the queue is always a good thing with qualified individuals. So if we can have I'm not asking for a full scale campaign, but awareness that we're looking for qualified individuals to sit on those ABCs with sophisticated backgrounds would be beneficial.
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, short answer, yes. We will reconvene in committee of the whole this evening to try to address the issue of appointing the nominating committee per se. Once the nominating committee has been appointed, then we as staff will discuss all of the various positions that must be filled immediately and those that are going to be filled in the next few months to year. And I think it's more in reference to those, Councillor, the ones that are going to be filled in the next few months to year, where we do need to have an active campaign to go out and seek gifted individuals to fill those positions.
Thank you,
the point is not lost.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor McKenzie, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to take this opportunity to thank staff and the board at the LBR for making this season possible to have winter sports on ice, hockey, figure skating, whatever it gets to be. Tim, you did a great job. Thank you very much. And thanks to the board of the LBR for making this happen. It's a win-win for the city of St. John.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe?
5.7, is this the second of a 2-year contract? Is it the second year? And is it a contract that goes up every 2 years?
If I may, Your Worship. Thank you. It is my understanding that this is a second year, so it was a renewal. Whether it'll be there next year is entirely dependent on construction on the Fundy Quay area.
I didn't hear you. I didn't understand because I didn't hear you.
Okay. Is that better,
Lot
Councillor?
better, a
Okay,
lot better.
apologies for that. Yes, this is the second year for this license. It was renewed on just a few month term because of the pending construction on the Fundy Quay site.
Then my question would be then, does this contract come up next year? Because it's in front of quite a few liquor establishments. That's the only question I'm asking. And that's why I asked it, is it the second of a 2-year term?
Well, it's
And does it come up again next year?
yeah, this term ends at the end of the summer. So if
So-
it comes up next year, it will likely not be on that site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it. So I'll call, we've already had it moved. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Any contrary? Motion carried.
And just to confirm, Your Worship, item 5.4 will be removed, and that will be appearing on your agenda as 14.1.
14.1.
Okay, and the next item, Your Worship, is item 6 on your agenda, and it's the members' comment section, but this particular agenda, we have it broken into two. The first round would be the swearing-in comments.
Thank you. All right, so what I thought we would do with this is we'll just go around the horseshoe. We'll start with the at-large councillors. I'm going to send it over to you first, Councillor Harris, and then we'll go to 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. It's a privilege and honor to be with you all here today. During this past election, 8,487 St. John residents put their faith in me to represent them as their councillor at large. My team and I developed a vision for St. John that is ambitious and inclusive. With Colby Wallace, a high school student here from St. John High, and I know a student of Mr. Sullivan across the table here, as my campaign manager, and many volunteers, we spread our message and platform which focused on 3 core issues: livability, sustainability, and housing. I'm proud now to represent this platform as your councillor at large. This past year has caused a rise of inequality to widen and deepen across our nation. As life becomes harder to afford for many St. Johners, it is important that we have a city that is livable. People need to be able to get around St. John without a car safely. The tragic deaths and injury of cyclists and pedestrians has shown us that we have more work to do here. Those with disabilities and mobility issues need us to elevate their concerns because they feel the brunt of these realities. Now that we are turning a corner as a city, now is the time to pursue new initiatives, funding models, and construction methods to make our city more friendly to people. We can do this by greening the built environment and ensuring we don't make owning a car a prerequisite to having a quality life in St. John. With a growing population of newcomers from around the world, people from other city centers moving here, and young people moving back for job opportunities, the hopes and desires for St. John are expanding. We need our city to be sustainable environmentally and financially. We have done a tremendous amount of heavy lifting to address our finances. We are now tasked with more crucial work to do to protect our environment and to ensure biodiversity is at the forefront of our thinking when we build. This is work we can do, and we are well positioned to do it. People want to see a greener built environment. They want to see protection for species and efforts to become lower emitters. Time does not permit us to delay. Finally, we need action taken as a city to take a lead on housing justice. Citizens have reported major hardships, rent evictions that are callous, and rent hikes that are predatory. I know that many parts of the housing legislation falls under provincial jurisdiction, but I also know that other cities have had to overcome similar handicaps, but they rose to the challenge to ensure their citizens had safe and affordable housing. To the city staff who work hard every day to make the dreams of St. John come true, I say this: be bold. You have a council here who is ready and willing to listen and support your ideas that can move the needle on these issues. Together, I know we can make St. John sustainable, more livable, and work towards housing justice. Thank you.
Councillor Harris, that was impressive. You had 14 seconds left on your 3 minutes. I'm going to pass it over now to Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly won't be as long. Most of my campaign team is out sailing right now. But certainly, for me, incredible thanks go to my family, Colleen, Alexandra, and Connor. Two important reasons. One, for the family discussion that allowed me to let my name stand again. As everybody around here knows, we might be here on our own, but without the support of our family and what we miss from our family during our time here, it doesn't happen. So not only that, my children probably are some of the wisest political young people in St. John. Alex did her first campaign with me 15 years ago, and she just turned 17, so we were dragging her around. So thank you to them, and certainly to my family and friends who supported me throughout the campaign. And I really need to give a shout out. I'm also blessed with one of the best mother-in-laws a person can have. Pat Lockery, certainly my West Side campaign manager. Without her and my nieces and nephews helping me to get the word out, I may not be sitting here again. So thanks certainly to them. To the citizens of St. John, thank you for having your faith in me to bring me back for a third term. I really truly do love the work that I do on your behalf, and look forward to doing that for another 4 years. To my council colleagues, I think if you sat down and designed a succession plan for a successful business, you might have drawn this council. The last council did a whole lot of heavy lifting. It went through and solved a $10 million structural deficit. It got growth as not a dirty word in St. John and brought that forward. And the citizens elected enough of us that have that corporate memory to keep it going. But if you don't bring in new ideas and new energy, you just keep going the way you were going. And I truly look forward to working with this group that's sitting around the horseshoe, along with our crack city staff, because we've got that direction, we've got that foundation, we've got those new ideas, and we've got that energy. This is going to be a successful council. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. Thank you.
Thank you so much. 17 seconds left. It's close too. Councilor Norton, Ward 1.
Thank you, Worship. Cut me off. I may run over. Thank you first to the many City of St. John professional staff that have prepared for this meeting and our recent swearing-in ceremony. On top of their many other duties and responsibilities, you are consummate professionals who serve as the backbone of this corporation. It would be impossible to be here without my family. Thank you to my incredible mom and dad, Mel and Sandy Norton, my brilliant daughters, Sophia, Kate, and Maggie, my brother and sister-in-law, and my sister and brother-in-law. Supportive families, I've always said, help build healthy communities, and I am blessed to have such a family. I've said it before, but I am well aware that I am unreasonably fortunate. I think often about that, and that awareness is one of the things that makes me work hard and focus. I'm not entirely sure how I got here for a third consecutive time, but it is not lost on me that this position comes with an unusual amount of responsibility. Going forward, it will be important that we are hard on the issues and not on the people, which means each other as council colleagues, our professional city staff, and the many citizens who call St. John home and have given us a very special opportunity to represent them. Recently, I was reminded during a Sunday church service that we live in a world where opinions are strongly held and weakly formed. And my hope for this common council is we do not subscribe to this philosophy, but form our opinions on professional advice, best practice, and facts. It has been said that there's no greater challenge and there is no greater honor than to be here where we are, and that is serving the public. And being humbled after 2 previous terms, I certainly know this to be true. I will work relentlessly to meet those challenges head on and do so in a way that will make my council colleagues, City of St. John staff, and my beloved communities and their family proud. In closing, thank you to the many West Siders, you, my Ward 1 neighbors, and the many St. Johners, regardless of ward, and those that call not only St. John home, but our surrounding communities in Musquash, Grand Bay Westfield, Rossay, Quispamsis, St. Martin's, and Hampton. You have all invested in me, encouraged me, inspired me, and challenged me. And my pledge to my community is over the next 4 years, I will start this term as I finish the last, and that is to work hard to leave our great city better than I found it, while making my family and all of you proud of how you are represented on St. John Common Council. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. I'll pass it over now to Councillor Killen, also Ward 1.
Worship. I just want to start off by thanking my family. They are large and in charge, and I'm quite grateful to have such an extended group of folks and friends who showed up and supported me through this campaign. Like I have no words for all the work and energy that you all put into helping me get elected here around this wonderful horseshoe. I really want to thank West Siders. I grew up on the West Side. I'm really privileged to have grown up frolicking across around the beaches and everywhere that we call home. And one of the things that came out of my campaign, and something that I want to keep doing, which is to lead with empathy. So I want to lead with a heart, and I appreciate the education that Eastern Circle's actually given me on a lot of issues concerning their community, and I want to continue to do that with all the various folks in St. John who make up our beautiful, beautiful city. I really need to thank the staff for the weekend that we just had, and to the city manager and to the mayor and all the incumbent councillors, and of course Jerry, who are here to help guide us on this path of how to be a responsible and ethical leader. So I really, really appreciate everyone's insights and thoughts and explanations. So they keep saying to me there are no stupid questions, which I could not be more thrilled about, because there's going to be times where I don't know what I don't know. And I'm not the expert on everything, and that's why I'm looking to not just the staff and the fellow council and the mayor, but to the community to help guide me on my next 4 years. So I'm emotional because I have started this journey, I'd say about 20 years ago, as St. Malachy's running for student council president, literally like this spring. And so it feels really poetic to be sitting here with you all and sitting here with the support of my community. I come full circle, and I just could not be more grateful. So I really appreciate you all, appreciate this community, and I can't wait to serve you with a big heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Killen. Councillor Ogden, please.
I'd like to thank citizens who voted for me, and I'm humbled that they would have faith in me. I also would like to thank the staff this weekend and the very kind councillors for their knowledge and kindness. And I also have a tremendous amount of time for my family and friends, as my mother died the first day out on the campaign trail, and I felt she was always with me. It's an honor to serve in the place I love so much, where I've spent all my life. And I think of the words that Barack Obama had, that we, the citizens, are the people we've been waiting for to save us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I want to start by thanking the people of Ward 2 for having faith in me a third time round. Third time's a charm. We've had 2 fantastic councils. I think, Mel Norton's council was awesome. Don Darling's council was good. We've had some ups and downs on both councils. We've had some really rough times with financial issues, but we got through it. We're at a point now where I think this council is going to be in a very positive light. Things are going to be so good in St. John with this council. And I want to thank my friends and my volunteers that helped to put me back at the horseshoe here. Most of all, I want to thank my family. Without family, you don't go very far. So I feel very privileged to be here. Every time I come back to this table, every Monday night that I sit here, I think, what a privilege it is to sit with these people. We've got staff second to none. I've learned that over the 9 years I've been here. They take a lot of criticism, but I'll tell you, I'll put them up against any city in this country. Excellent staff. And, you know, we've got the policies in place. We've got 5.5 new counselors. I say a half because this guy's back after sitting next to me for 2 years. You know, we're all set. We're ready to go. We've got growth in this city that I've never seen before in my life. It's awesome, you know, and I think that, you know, I don't want to go on, but I'm just very happy to be here. I thank the people that helped get me here. I thank the staff for all they do for me here, and mostly my family for being there when I get home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Lowe. Oh, wait a minute. We got to get your speaker on here.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I want to thank my team, the same team I've always had. I want to thank those that voted for me to put me back where I wanted to be. Thanks.
You still got another 2 minutes and 50 seconds left. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a feeling Councillor Lowe and I will balance each other out on our time. First off, I would extend my thanks to St. John for electing such a dynamic, skilled, and committed team this time around. You know, I look around this horseshoe and I see a lot of passion, a lot of perspective, and a lot of people who are ready to get to work to make things happen in this city, and I'm really excited about that. I'd be remiss without thanking a few folks for on my re-election this time around. Certainly I'd extend it to people like Mary McKinnon, Dixie Coughlin, Colleen Arsenault, my family, my parents, my aunts and uncles, my brother Patrick. The list goes on for quite some time, but truly thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm thrilled to get continue working for Ward 3. Like I said before, I think truly that this is going to be a focused and driven council that is committed to working the plan that the last council has formed. You know, we did a lot of heavy lifting the last time around, a lot of tough decisions, and I think now we're going to start to see ourselves get into a stride on whether it's livability, whether it's growth, whether it's whatever it is encompassed in that vision that this council is going to put forward, and I'm incredibly excited about that. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Stewart, please.
So I would like to start by thanking everybody that voted for me, that worked so hard on my campaign, putting up signs. And as most of you would know, we had a lot of signs up in East St. John, and I had permission for every one of them to go on lawns. So the support was just, it really was overwhelming. So thank you to my friends and all the voters. But really, without my family being behind me, I would not have even dreamed of taking this step. My family is very tight, as you saw tonight, I hope. They supported me. They supported me in a lot of ways. And they left here tonight, just as a side note, to go pay tribute or respects to our mother who passed 26 years ago today. So I would love to have been there, but this is obviously where I want to be. I was excited to be part of this council. You know, it's one thing to get in the campaign and to think that you might get elected, then to get elected, then to know who I'm working with. Very excited. I'll tell you, the creme de la creme this weekend, meeting the city staff management, just literally blew me away. I've had the privilege to work with a lot of people. I've managed as many as 110 people at one time. I'm not a micromanager, so I pay full respect to the city staff and management. You guys impressed the hell out of me yesterday and Saturday. I have faith in you, and I know that with this council and that team behind us, that good things, great things indeed, are going to happen for the city of St. John. So let's get going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you so much. Actually, I should say assalamu alaikum. which means peace and blessings be upon you. I want to thank everybody who definitely helped me with my campaign. It's unbelievable how many times signs went up, signs came down, signs went back up. I was getting support from all over the place. And, it really shows how incredible St. John, when you have graduates of UNBSJ contacting you from Calgary, from Kuwait, from Saudi Arabia, from Australia, saying you're doing a good job, you're not doing enough Facebook Lives, people don't know your direction yet, get online. It was just unbelievable. Of course, my mom and dad have been a great support. My family overseas in Egypt, my in-laws, who are Egyptian, we're just so excited. Politics is very different there. And of course, my rock is my husband, who's also my business partner, Ehab. It's unbelievable how much time that he was putting into helping me with my campaign. Full disclosure, and I kind of talked about it this weekend, I'd been coming to council meetings pretty regularly for 9 years. So every other Monday you're coming to council and then listening to it after the whole thing again. And I remember asking Jay Kimball, who is my landlord at 87 King Street that just came down last week and a half. It's bittersweet. And I said to him, Jay, I've got a question for you. You've got a lot of experience. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten in business? And he told me, surround yourself with good people. And I stood there and thought for a minute, and I thought, I do that every other Monday night. The city staff are top notch. I just want to make sure that St. John knows that the right people are sitting in the right seats here. I am going to challenge you because that's what I love. I love people to challenge me, and that's what makes you better and better and better. But I don't know how much better this team can get because they're unbelievable. When it comes to council, I'm so excited to work with all of you guys and gals. So happy to see Mayor Reardon sitting in her seat. It's wonderful. And of course, it can't go without saying thank you so much to our constituents in Ward 4. I feel so privileged to be sitting here representing you, but I also want to thank the citizens around St. John that have been extremely supportive of me running for council. It was history in the making today, and I'm absolutely thrilled because there is no better city to be representing on this earth.
Thank you, Councilor Radwan. All right, I'll wrap it up. And I just want to say, as everyone knows, I'm the 79th mayor of the city of St. John. I will have to assume there have been 79 teams until this team now. I think I have an excellent team. I want to say thank you to everyone who ran. Got an amazing team, got a great balance here. I have to thank my husband because he put all my signs up, and when you're running at large or for the mayor's job, you need those gigantic 4x8s. And he would come home at night, and after a few nights, he'd say, I don't know why, but I'm sore all through here. And so every once in a while when he did that motion, he recognized what it was from. My family has been a little bit concerned because my kids, because they've seen that evolution of being the mayor of Don Darling and how it was a difficult job and how the public can be not always pleasant, I guess. But I'm hoping that, we're going to go forward. We're staying on a positive track now, and that things will be good. I also want to thank, since we only have 3 guests in the audience tonight, I want to thank them again for coming. You've made our night here very special, and for the inaugural meeting of this council, it's been really wonderful to have you. It's been so fortunate that coincided with this meeting for us. So thanks again for being here. I will also echo as well what the other councillors have said. We were here for you 3 would be the only ones that don't know this, but we came on Saturday at 7:45 a.m. We were here till 9 at night. And then we came back on Sunday at 7:45 a.m., but we got out luckily at 5:30. So staff had 3 huge binders for us, which in total of slides were about 1,400 that they put together to bring everybody up to speed on where we've been and where we'd like to go. So I have to say a big thank you to staff. Our staff has been very, very supportive of us. As councillors, when I first came on, happy to bring us up to speed on any items, explain things to us, whatever. So, you know, we have a great team on both sides. We're going to be a partnership. We're going to work together. We're going to do some amazing things. So thank you. All right, I guess we'll call the next item, please. And if you 3 would like to leave, you're certainly welcome to go. I don't know how this is going to go tonight. My first night in the chair, I could be here till 10 o'clock. All right.
Yes, Your Worship. So now is the second portion of members' comments, and this is where the customary members' comments could be introduced.
All right, so customary members' comments. So we'll just line up according to when you push your button. I will cut you off for sure after 3 minutes with this, but go. Who's up first here? Councilor Sullivan, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. A semi-somber note, but you know, the last few weeks, many of us have spent too much time in King Square. But I really appreciate the time. I'm a cis white guy of European descent. Unfortunately, too many people like me appear on too many posters for St. John. I have loved standing amongst Aboriginal people last night when I stood with many of the Muslim population. And by the way, happy Pride Month, everybody. My St. John includes everybody. And while for horrible reasons for many of these gatherings, I so appreciate the ability to gather with St. John as I want St. John to be. So just thank you for the invitations. Please continue to invite me out and continue to educate me. So just thank you to all that. Happy Pride Month, everyone. I missed this in my earlier comments. Thank you to all of the candidates, 51 candidates. How many people love St. John so much that they put their names forward to work in St. John? And really, to follow up on Councillor Norton's earlier comments, to the candidates who love St. John so much you put your name forward, please look at our website and put your name forward for the ABCs. If you are that passionate about St. John, bring your talent. We need it. So thank you for that. I had the opportunity this past week. I do a volunteer thing at my yacht club. And I drove down last week and I couldn't get in one of the entrances because a couple of city crews had an entrance blocked off. So I parked and I just kind of wandered around to see what was going on. And the first thing I observed, it was the pothole patrol, and they were filling in potholes in the bottom of Millage Avenue. But as I approached, there was a gentleman waiting to launch his boat across the street who started, in not a very kind way, talking to our people about, well, you know, you're filling those potholes. We've got a pothole over on the east side. And one of our crew just looked up and said, sir, thank you very much. I highly recommend you call our public service number, 658-4455, because that's what these people did, and that's why we're here filling in their potholes. And it was such a professional conversation from our frontline workers. So thank you to Quentin Poppenhausen, who I had a brief conversation with, and his crew, who not only were there working to fill in potholes, but also just the way they interact with the public as they were doing their job. Wonderful job. Finally, 74.8%. Wear your masks, wash your hands, vaccinate, 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 vaccinate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ogden?
To thank the outside workers. For the last 24 years, we've been planting about 80,000 volunteers, planting marigolds, spruce trees, painting murals, cleaning up a lot of vacant lots, painting buildings. And the outside workers have always been there to help us, to take sometimes when we carry some of the stuff off the vacant lots that sometimes you'd be afraid to carry off. But the outside workers have been just super, and I would like to thank the outside workers for the last 24 years.
Right. Councilor Radwan, please.
Yes, I do want to definitely mention the last couple of events as well, echoing what Councillor Sullivan was talking about. We certainly, it was certainly heartwarming to see so many people out, but we certainly should not end up back in the square again. To be standing there talking about 215 Indigenous lives a couple of weeks ago was really disheartening. And we know that there's so many more. And then yesterday we were in the square as well, talking about the family in London that had lost their lives because of Islamophobia. And I do wear a green ribbon today to represent speaking out against Islamophobia. One thing that I am going to do while I'm in my members' comments is I'm going to be talking about all of the hidden heroes in St. John. Councillor Sullivan actually used to always talk about the zoo. I'm going to be choosing in the future a different charitable organization or not-for-profit organization that is a champion in St. John, and I'll give you some details on that. I do want to mention that there are a couple of events that are coming up. One is the second annual Jason Zellward Physical Challenge. This is actually something that's very near and dear to my heart. It's actually something that is done in support of the Grievance Center. Jason Zellward was actually a major in our military who is my cousin, who lost his life because of cancer at the age of 37. And so if you can get out to support that, I certainly encourage it. We also have an event coming that is called Stay and Grow on stage at the Imperial Theatre. And this is a group that gets together to try to encourage people to actually stay in our community. And research has shown that the best way to keep people in your communities is to make them feel like they're part of your community. So this is happening at the Imperial Theatre, June the 24th at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radwan. We have Councillor Killen up next, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Paula and Gary said on the visual side of things. There's so many organizations kind of coming up and doing this important work. So recognizing Eastern Circle again, recognizing the folks who came out last night. And I just wanted to say I am a member of the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ community. So I want to say not just happy Pride, but hi, I'm here. I am queer and I am part of this community, and I want everyone to know that you have a safe space with me. I want to give a shout out to Chroma, New Brunswick, who is doing a lot of work in educating folks on the lived experiences of people from this community. So I just wanted to identify myself for the community to ensure that you know who I am and that I'm here for you as your counselor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Killen. Councillor Norton, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. I don't know where we are, but it might be, did you? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I knew that you would know that. So we need to get to 75. Everyone knows that. So you're not getting through a meeting without that encouragement. And next, Tim O'Reilly's here, and I've said it before. He gets a lot of emails, and one inquiry he wouldn't mind, his office wouldn't mind, is the Sunshine Program that's back up and running, and it's at 4 parks: Dominion Park, it's a good one, Rockwood Park, Rainbow Park, and Little River Reservoir. It's for children ages 6 to 12, and nobody's counting, but Barry Ogden, you would know there's only 9 days left of school. And you want to have your kids active and engaged. It's a great program, and you can call 658-4455 or service@stjohn.ca and have your little one registered. So a great program. Let's fill up the spots. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. Councillor Harris, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Similar vein as Councillor Radwan. I do want to give a shout out to the John Howard Society this week, and a little bit of a plug for my own team at the St. John Tool Library, but more from this emerging program and these relationships that have been formed. As you look around, you see cranes up, you see construction happening. We're in a boom season for that, but our contractors in this city are desperate for laborers. And, we still have a high unemployment number. And I know Misty and her team at the John Howard Society, working with people to get them rehabilitated and reintroduced into society in positive ways. They've sent up a few people to learn some trade skills at the Sawhorse program, which I run with my team at the Tool Library. And we've seen 9 newcomers find work in the trades. We've seen 3 or 4 others recently find work. So there is a lot of work out there. Not all of it's advertised online. I know that one of our staff said over the weekend there were 300 job postings. I promise you there's 300 jobs just in trades, in various sub trades that are not posted. And so if people are looking for work, there is an emerging groundswell of groups out there like the Learning Exchange, John Howard Society, and I could go on, that are trying to help you get that work. And if you need some skills developed, there's other ones like us at the Tool Library, but others as well that are there to do it. So, don't sit on the sidelines. It's a great time to swing a hammer. It's a great time to make some extra money. And those are, for the most part in the trades, are living wage jobs, which our city desperately needs. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Over to you, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to congratulate the people in the Rockwood area for the pilot program, the WasteWise pilot program. It's the second pickup that they had. The first time it was 44%, and now we're up to 55%. And I expect that as we go forward, more people will get on board. But it's a tremendous response. We've got 41% now doing compost, 21% have, only 21%, I should say, have only had to have an extra bag. So when you think of 100%, only 21% of people are not, that need that extra bag. I think we're headed in the right direction. I just want to congratulate the public on that.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. All right, Common Clerk, I'll send it over to you for the next item, please.
Your Worship, next item is 10.1 on your agenda, and this is for a proposed municipal plan amendment, 695 Somerset Street.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Hamilton will do a review of this.
Commissioner Hamilton, please. Thank you.
Your Worship and members of council, before you this evening is a procedural matter with respect to a municipal plan amendment application. The application does involve the redesignation of a property at 695 Somerset Street and is intended to permit an office and maintenance building and a vehicle storage yard. As required under the Provincial Community Planning Act, a public presentation of the application was held at the April 19th Common Council meeting, and no submissions were received from members of the public during the required 30-day public presentation period. The next step in the process would be for council to refer the application to the Planning Advisory Committee for their review and to proceed to schedule a public hearing for your consideration of the application at the August 23rd Common Council meeting. Council can deny the application at this stage in the process, as that's certainly not the common practice. It is staff's recommendation to refer the application through the required process, which provides an opportunity for further technical and public review of the proposal. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. All right, thank you. On the question? All in favor? Okay. Against? Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting confused. When I saw the hands go up, I thought, I have questions. All right. Common Clerk, next item, please.
Yes, next item is 10.2 on your agenda, and this one is a public presentation, again with Commissioner Hamilton, for proposed municipal plan amendment at 60 Technology Drive.
Commissioner Hamilton, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before you this evening is a procedural matter with respect to a municipal plan amendment application. So this one involves a public presentation for a municipal plan amendment for a property at 60 Technology Drive. The proposal involves redesignation of the property from business park to medium and high density residential and is intended to permit the development of a multiple unit residential development project.
A public presentation, for your information, is a procedural requirement under the Community Planning Act that begins a 30-day period during which members of the public can make written submissions on the proposal. Much like the previous item, following the 30-day public presentation period, Council can decide to refer the application on through the remainder of the process. With that introduction, I will read the public presentation notice into the record, and I believe our senior planner, Mark Reed, will share his screen to show the location of the subject property as I do that. Public notice is hereby given that the Common Council of the City of St. John intends to consider an amendment to the Municipal Development Plan that would revise Policy LU 68 to recognize that the Somerset Business Park may be further developed with medium to high-density residential land uses, and redesignate on Schedule A of the Municipal Development Plan land having an approximate area of 13.71 hectares located at 60 Technology Drive, also identified as PID 551-44109 and PID 551-90458 from employment area, local center and urban residential to urban neighborhood, and redesignate on Schedule B of the Municipal Development Plan land having an approximate area of 13.71 hectares located at 60 Technology Drive, also identified as PID 551-44109 and PID 551-90458 from business center, stable residential, and local center to medium to high density residential. The reason for the change is to permit a development consisting of multiple unit residential buildings, and written objections on the proposed amendment may be made to the council in care of the common clerk by July 14th. Inquiries may be made to the office of the common clerk or Growth and Community Services, City Hall, 15 Market Square, between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? On the question, all in favor? Against? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, Common Clerk.
Yes, Your Worship. So next item's a business matter, and it's a report from the General Counsel's Office on Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action in Indigenous recognition.
I'm going to pass this over to Melanie Tompkins, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of Council. You will recall that at the March 22nd meeting of Council, Council expressed a desire and the City Manager committed to include an appropriate recognition of Indigenous people at the beginning of Council meetings. This evening, a land acknowledgement was read by the Honourable Graydon Nicholas, and a smudging ceremony and the honour song were performed by the founders of Eastern Circle. By making space for this evening, the City took a step toward reconciliation. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to briefly outline the history of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, the calls to action it issued aimed specifically to local governments, the stakeholder consultation we completed to develop the City's land acknowledgement text, and to recommend one more way in which the City could promote reconciliation. We apologize to members of Council as well as to the public, as some of the language and content of the presentation this evening may be difficult to hear. We therefore ask that you kindly provide us a safe landing as we present and start a dialogue on this complex and difficult topic. Presenting on our report this evening is Ms. Jacqueline Boucher, one of the solicitors in the General Counsel's Office. She was instrumental in the stakeholder consultation we completed and the research which led to our recommendation this evening. Ms. Boucher.
Thank you, Ms. Tompkins. Your Worship, Councilors, City Manager, thank you for allowing me to present to you this afternoon on this very important topic. I also wish to thank and acknowledge the founding members of Eastern Circle, Cassandra McLaughlin, Michaela Spinney, and Kateri Hibbert for being in the chamber tonight. My presentation this evening will not do this topic full justice and should not be considered comprehensive. There's so much opportunity for learning here,
and I hope to at least provide you with some of the context for our recommendations, as well as the Indigenous recognition and land acknowledgement that occurred at the outset of the meeting tonight. Before we can discuss the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action, we first need to understand the history of residential schools. And I must admit that presenting on this topic in this forum makes me deeply uncomfortable. But for there to be reconciliation, there must first be truth, and the truth of residential schools is difficult to reckon with. Residential schools were an aggressive policy developed under the authority of a federal piece of law called the Indian Act. The purpose of the Indian Act was assimilation, and the stated purpose of residential schools was to kill the Indian in the child. To that stated purpose, the photo included on this slide was used by the government of Canada as evidence of the success of residential schools. The goal was not hidden, it was explicit. Assimilation through the removal of children from their communities and their culture. You will see from the quote on your screen from John A. MacDonald, one of the founding architects of residential schools. Attendance at schools was mandatory. The quality of life for children was terrible. Children received poor nutrition, poor medical care, and tuberculosis ran rampant. The children were subject to extremely cruel punishment, and many died. They were forced to cut their hair and stop speaking their languages. Many were forced to take anglicized names. Above all, they were removed from their parents, their communities, and their cultures. The young boy in the photo attended a residential school in Regina, Saskatchewan. 4 years after enrolling in the school, Thomas was sent home ill with consumption, better known now as tuberculosis, and died shortly thereafter. And yet, as I mentioned, this picture was used by the Department of Indian Affairs to demonstrate the success of residential schools. I apologize that the quality of this slide is not as large on the screen as it is in your agenda kit, but it is a timeline of residential schools in Canada. And while a residential school did not exist in New Brunswick, they existed in almost every other province and territory. And in New Brunswick, there were 12 day schools that operated at various times between 1880 and 1992. And the purpose of day schools was also assimilation. It was in 1876, that the Indian Act was first introduced. In 1883, the federal government authorized the use of the residential school system. The use of residential schools peaked in approximately 1931, but they continued to operate until 1996, less than 30 years ago. This is not ancient history. We walk amongst the survivors of residential schools and day schools. Even though residential schools have closed, their legacy is ongoing, as outlined in the quote above on your screen from the book 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act by Indigenous author Bob Joseph, which is an incredibly powerful resource for anyone looking to learn more. The depth of the disruption to Indigenous communities by over 100 years of residential school policy is directly attributable to the high poverty rates, the large number of Indigenous children in foster care, the disproportionate number of incarcerated Indigenous people, and the hundreds of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Following the closure of the final residential school in 1996, many residential school survivors filed claims against the federal government and church bodies. As a part of the largest class action settlement in Canadian history, the survivors sought to establish the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a part of the settlement. And in 2015, the TRC final report was released with 94 calls to action. Between 6,000 and 15,000 children died or disappeared at or following their attendance in residential schools. Many of the children who died have not yet been found, and Volume 4 of the TRC final report specifically deals with the missing children and unmarked burials. the TRC concluded that residential school policy resulted in cultural genocide. Following the TRC report in 2015, another significant report was issued in 2019, dealing directly with one of the legacies of residential schools. Following the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and that report included 231 individual calls to justice. The recent announcement of the discovery of the remains of 215 children at the site of the Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia has reminded Canada of the very real need to address the calls to action. And it is important to note that reconciliation is an ongoing process. It is not a one-time event, but a multi-generational journey that involves all Canadians. From the TRC final report, there are 5 calls to action specifically directed at local governments. But before listing those, I wanted to note calls to action number 27 and 28, as they are directed to law societies and law schools to aim to ensure that lawyers receive appropriate cultural competency training, which includes the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, or UNDRIP, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, Aboriginal Crown relation, skills-based training in intercultural competency, conflicts resolution, human rights, and anti-racism. Now, to turn to the calls to action specifically directed at local governments, we begin at number 43, which is a call for local governments to fully adopt and implement UNDRIP as the framework for reconciliation. UNDRIP is the most comprehensive international instrument on the rights of Indigenous people. It establishes a universal framework of minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the Indigenous peoples of the world. And it elaborates on existing human rights standards and fundamental freedoms as they apply to the specific situation of Indigenous people. Number 47, which is also up on your screen now, calls on local governments to repudiate colonial concepts of the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius. Call to action number 57 is on local governments to provide education and cultural training to civil servants. Call number 75 is directed to all levels of government, churches, Indigenous communities, former residential school students, and current landowners to develop and implement strategies for the protection of residential school cemeteries and to provide memorials and markers to honor the deceased children. And finally, call number 77 is for local governments to work collaboratively with the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation to identify and collect records relevant to the history and legacy of residential schools. And in addition to those 5 calls to action directed directly at municipalities, there are also 8 indirect calls to action, which are listed on your screen. The TRC resulted in a significant rise in the use of land acknowledgements as a move towards reconciliation. This evening, the City of St. John took a concrete step toward reconciliation by hearing the land acknowledgement for the first time. We conducted widespread consultations with stakeholders and reviewed the land acknowledgements for other institutions in New Brunswick, and we are indebted to members of the Indigenous community who granted us their time and knowledge in an effort to establish a land acknowledgement for the City of St. John. On your screen now, you will see the text that was drafted and read earlier this evening by the Honourable Graydon Nicholas, representing the City of St. John's land acknowledgement. In our consultations with stakeholders, we tried to be as forward-looking and actively sought input from the Indigenous community on actions the municipality could take as steps toward reconciliation and meeting the calls to action. One such act was to address the community in the Old North End named Indiantown. The use of the name Indiantown is outdated and offensive to members of the Indigenous community. Indian was a name imposed on Indigenous communities by European settlers. It was not how they self-identified prior to contact by the Europeans, and is now a hurtful reminder of the legacy of colonialism. We have researched the genesis of the community name, the process for renaming the community, which leads to the following recommendation. That the city cease using the word Indiantown in its records and actions, and further that the city manager take the necessary steps to have the name Indiantown removed from other sources, including Google Maps, as soon as possible. And further, that through the Civic Commemoration Committee, the city make it a priority to consult with stakeholders and community members to have the community currently known as Indiantown officially renamed through the New Brunswick Department of Tourism, Culture and Heritage and updated in the Geographical Names Board of Canada. That concludes my presentation this evening, subject to any questions from council. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Boucher, for your presentation. I would first like to put the recommendation on the floor and provide a motion to do so. I would like to add a fourth point to the recommendation, though, and I will read it, and with the seconder could offer a bit of perspective on it as well. And the fourth point would just be it resolved that Common Council directs staff to develop and deliver a presentation providing an opportunity to learn more about the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, with a goal of enhancing cultural competency, strengthen relations, and effective decision-making in support of reconciliation. And further, that Common Council directs staff to develop and deliver a report providing a proposal for concrete ways in which the City of St. John may work together with Indigenous communities to initiate, foster, and support reconciliation initiatives and activities to benefit the community and allow all citizens to flourish.
All right, we've got the four recommendations then on the floor. Okay, time for questions. All right, Councilor Harris, it looks like you're up first.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Boucher, for that. With regards to the other recommendations in the TRC, do we know of other jurisdictions that have taken those on? And maybe this could be a question for the city manager as well, or council, sorry. Do we know of other jurisdictions that are taking those other initiatives, how they're doing it? Is there plans for city staff to give us a further briefing on how we might enact more of those recommendations?
Your Worship, through you to the councillor. Again, short answer, yes. We've got quite a bit of work to do here. And as is mentioned in the report that was before you this evening, we've already begun that work and taking a look at what else we can do. Whatever we do has to be in close collaboration and consultation with all interested parties. So we will continue that work specifically as to what other communities have done across this country. That will be part of our research and analysis because we can, of course, learn from others as well.
And just further to that, thank you, City Manager, for that response. Where are we at with the UN DRIP designation? Was there a motion? Am I mistaken in thinking there was a motion made for us to join that United Nations declaration previously, or there wasn't?
In the recommendation this evening, Councillor, staff would go back and study all that and bring all this back to council to explain the steps, the further steps that could be taken.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of tonight's recommendation, as worded by Councillor Hickey, would enable us to do the work that needs to be done and come back with all the information that would answer your questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you so much for that. I know it was hard, but it had to be done, and I think it's definitely a plus for St. John to take this step, and be the first to do it. So I know we had a long weekend, and some of our weekend we spent talking about this and sensitivity training and all that. I think that we're leading the way, and I appreciate the hard work that you guys have done very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Okay, over to Councillor Radwan, please.
Thank you so much. I kind of wanted to echo a little bit of what John said. I thought that this was really thorough. Thank you very much for everything that you've put into this. And I do just want to make a quick comment that it's true, this reconciliation needs to continue, and it's not a one-step process for sure. With the devastating acts that have previously happened, I'm not really sure how over the generations can heal from this. One thing, just taking it a little step further, I just wanted to mention that I really hope that the community will embrace the Indigenous community. And I want to be able to see businesses, art centers, community organizations, multicultural organizations celebrating the beautiful and unique culture of the Indigenous people. And thank you so much for coming today. And we don't just welcome you, we absolutely want you every step of the way.
Thank you. Okay, over to Councilor Killen.
Just a quick question. If the initiative sort of is with the renaming of things, with Indian Town being the beginning, if that will continue on as we look at other sort of colonial style names that may not be so.
I'll defer to the city manager.
My common answer this evening, through you, Your Worship, to the councillor seems to be yes. The answer is yes. We have developed in the last council this notion of creating a special committee that would take a look at namings moving forward. And what you are suggesting this evening is certainly a consideration as we move forward. It will be a slow process. It will be a deliberate process. We will make sure that we have consulted well and worked with the interested parties on whatever the issue has to be, whether that is a new naming of something new or a renaming of something that's already entrenched within our community. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. I'll say thanks again. It certainly is makes it more powerful for us to have representatives from Eastern Circle here for you to hear our words. Thank you so much. All right, Common Clerk, on to the next item.
Yes, Your Worship. 12.2 on your agenda is another staff report, and it's entitled University Avenue Traffic Safety and Active Transportation Improvements.
All right, so I'm handing this over to Commissioner Hugenholtz, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'm pleased this evening to introduce Tim O'Reilly. He's going to be giving a presentation on this University Avenue. As I mentioned during orientation this weekend, Mr. O'Reilly is both the Director of Parks and Rec Facilities for the city, but he also is the city's traffic engineer. And it's in that capacity that he's here with us this evening. For new councillors, you'll find Mr. O'Reilly is an extremely dedicated, professional, diligent employee, and you'll hear from him frequently. We are pleased this evening to discuss a proposed improvement to cycling facilities in the city. This is a short section that we're talking about, but it is an important part of the Campus Harbor connection, one of our significant active transportation routes. The work that has been put into this initiative can give an indication of the analysis required, as well as the conflicting viewpoints that need to be considered in determining an appropriate balance between the various users of our streets in the city. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you, Commissioner Hugenholtz.
Good evening, Your Worship and Common Council, and welcome back for those council members returning, and welcome to everybody who's new as well. I'm sure I'll get to know you over the next 4 years. I'm sure most of you have been on University Avenue, so it won't take too long to describe the way it is. But it is a 5-lane arterial street. There's 2 lanes in each direction for through traffic, as well as a center lane that diverts between a center median and a left turn lane for left turning traffic. Back about 2014, we did convert the 2 outside lanes of University Avenue into shared lanes for both motorists and cyclists when we first implemented the Harbor Passage Connection bike route. What I'm going to be talking about this evening with respect to University Avenue is really 3 unique opportunities. And they all happen to talk about different types of transportation modes within St. John. And these are all based on discussions I've had over the years with several members of the community in different opportunities to improve that street. The 3 are up on the screen right now. They deal again with motorist issues and safety issues in the street, pedestrians as well as cyclists. And I guess one of the main messages for this evening for council is we do need a balanced transportation system. Again, I speak to a lot of community members. They have different points of view as to how our transportation system needs to pursue. But this presentation will deal with all 3 of these issues. Other opportunities that really brought University Avenue to the forefront, because of course we have a lot of streets in St. John, are up on the screen before you here. Again, carry forward the opportunity to continue improving that cycling route that connects our uptown area to the hospital university, as well as others that are up on the screen. Whenever I talk about a transportation opportunity within St. John, there's a couple of tick marks always try to cover off. One is feedback and consultation from the community. That's always very important. Data and interpretation of that data is very important. Industry best practices, always looking at the best ways to improve transportation system and learning from past opportunities. We have had a history in St. John of making improvements for different modes of transportation, and whenever we do that, we need to learn from that. From the data, I'm not going to go over what's on the screen in total because it's in the report, but one of the points overall is the data simply doesn't suggest the need for 5 lanes of traffic for University Avenue. It's about half or less than half of what the volume needed for that much roadway width. So there's opportunities there to look at other improvements. One of the earlier discussions this evening about St. James Street was about the draft cycling strategy. And as Commissioner Huguenot mentioned, we will back to council in a couple of months to bring that finalized phase 3 set of UMOVSJ, including the cycling strategy. But what's up on the screen right now is a snippet from that cycling strategy that indicates several arterial cycling networks to connect our community. Highlighted red is University Avenue. What I'm going to be talking about this evening with respect to improvements aligns exactly and very closely with the recommendation of that draft cycling strategy. And I can certainly tell you from the feedback we've heard, there won't be any changes to what's currently in the draft for University Avenue. I mentioned earlier opportunities to improve safety for motorists. Again, talking to a lot of people who commute within the area of the city, there's several concerns that are addressed. Those are kind of represented on the screen here, and I'll go through them fairly quickly. One issue is there's a right-hand slip lane from Millage Avenue into University Avenue. It's a free flow lane where essentially you don't have to yield at all making the turn. Another issue is a transit stop, which is at this very western end of the street, which is a heavily used stop and a heavily used route, adds to the congestion in the area. As well, 2 heavily used driveways, including one to 2 restaurants with a heavily used drive-through. So this particular area, the west end of University Avenue, is certainly congested, and I can understand the concerns of motorists in terms of the issues, and we're looking at opportunities to improve it. So taking all that feedback I've heard on pedestrian issues, cycling issues, motorist issues along the entire street, we developed an initial plan for University Avenue. And I'll go over those quickly. It includes moving the transit shelter further away from this congested area, closer to Bloom Street. The right-hand slip lane from Millage to University Avenue would no longer have a free flow access on University Avenue. We would also include yield signs. In fact, we already put the yield signs up last year for an early implementation. A road diet would be involved, converting those 5 lanes of vehicle traffic down to 3 lanes and providing that additional roadway space over to wide buffered bike lanes. In addition to that, with the addition of the bus shelter being moved, we're planning to put a crosswalk down closer to Bloom Street to help those people trying to cross the street at the moved bus stop, as well as a second crosswalk down further to where the university, or sorry, where the hospital entrance is. As well, the initial plan identifies to keep the left turn lanes all the way along the street, whether it be here at the entrance to the two restaurants or in other places along the street to gain that access. Up on the screen now are just some design features which we've incorporated as part of that plan. So on the left is a signalized crosswalk design. You've probably seen a lot of those up. We started installing those in about 2015 in St. John. They're solar powered and wireless. Those are the type of designs we're planning to install at both Bloom Street as well as down at the hospital entrance. On the right-hand side of the screen are 2 different types of bike lanes. On the top is a buffered bike lane. So you have an additional buffer space between the vehicle traffic and the cyclists to improve safety. And then the lower right is one step above that in terms of adding bollards to those buffered bike lanes, again, to provide an additional layer of protection between those two transportation modes. Consultations was a big part of this project, and so I presented that initial plan to the community, both through a virtual community meeting as well as specific stakeholder engagements with different participants and different stakeholders I need to contact with. So we had a community meeting back in April, had 21 people attend that and provide input. I also had follow-up of 37 different written responses to those different suggestions with the initial plan. And again, as I mentioned, other stakeholders, which we consulted with specifically. Again, the main point here, a lot of different feedback from a lot of different stakeholders with different priorities on different types of modes of transportation. So again, our transportation system cannot be a one-size-fits-all. It has to provide access for all those different modes of transportation. There was one option suggested at the consultation session, which is moving all the vehicle traffic over to one side of the street. So if you picture what's up on the screen now, the blue area would be space used for motorists. It was acknowledged during the meeting that this would not be applicable closer to, again, that western end where the restaurants are, but could transition over partway along the street. And that would create the other half of the street on the other side of the median over to more active transportation modes. So we looked at that after the meeting to take a closer look at it. And for several reasons, city staff is not recommending to proceed with this type of design. First of all, it does create an unorthodox transition from the 4-lane cross-section over the 2-lane cross-section. The left turn lanes will not be provided anymore along the street because you only have 2 lanes left over for motorized traffic. It does create unorthodox crossings at several intersections along the street, 8 side on one side, 11 on the other if you use the other side of the street. The right-of-way that's left over would still have to be maintained, perhaps not as much asphalt, but we have some sort of facility there for active transportation, plus green space that would have to be provided. And again, the feedback from the community was mixed. Some had more focus on cycling, pedestrian traffic, but a lot of the community had feedback that motorist traffic needs to be sustained as well. So for all those reasons, for University Avenue specifically, we're not recommending this approach. However, based on all that feedback, we have made several changes to the plan based on all that feedback. So first of all, and they're itemized up on the screen now, we are going to end the dedicated bike lane in the westbound direction, so from right to left, before you get to Bloom Street. We're doing that as well as some changes on the other side, specifically again because of the drive-through with those 2 restaurants, which does back up onto the street at times. It creates a holding lane for those vehicles that are backing up. Number 2 is, again, the same type of concept on the other side of the roadway, cutting back some of that center median closer to the Millage Avenue end to provide more queuing space for those vehicles which do queue up waiting to get into those 2 restaurants. Number 3 is in implementing a no stopping zone. So in the event that vehicles do queue up beyond that left turn lane, vehicles will no longer be allowed to stop in what will be remaining just one single vehicular lane without the ability to get around it with the bollards in place. Number 4, the addition of the bollards. Again, some of the feedback from the community was the buffered bike lanes weren't sufficient in isolation, so we're recommending the use of bollards. And this will be kind of a test case for other opportunities around the city, be able to identify the operating and maintenance costs of doing this type of design. And in addition, a reduction of the speed limit from 60 kilometers an hour down to 50 kilometers an hour, which actually does represent somewhat the operating speeds as it exists right now. So the recommendations before this evening are to endorse that final plan, again, with all the feedback we've incorporated from all the different points of view. And we will be back to council at a later date when we're getting closer to actual implementation for some of the traffic bylaw amendments, such as the no stopping zone as well, and the speed limit reduction. And with that, Your Worship, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Harris, you're the first one up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for that. I'm one of those cyclists out there, admittedly, but I'm also a builder, and I know when I build a bathroom, for example, it's been accepted and pushed upon me as a builder to meet a code requirement for things like handicap accessibility. Now, we don't debate that anymore. No matter how many business owners, no matter how many people are frustrated by the fact that they have to provide handicap bathrooms. I know I'm getting to a point, so forgive me, but the question I have is, I have to do that as a builder regardless of what I feel or think. We have a motorist who's driving 1,000+ pound piece of metal versus somebody who's on a 40 pound less with their body. They're at severe risk. Is there not something in our traffic laws? I know it's not the same as the building code, but surely there is some sort of code of practice or ethics that I'm not familiar of, and I'm looking for some input on that. What are we obligated to do as a city to provide a safe street for people who are disadvantaged, for pedestrians, one, who have, in many cases in our city, really long distances to travel across the streets, and 2, for cyclists who are at greater risk when a collision does happen, because we just lost Mr. Phil McMillan in the South End in a tragedy over this. So my question is that, what are we obligated to do?
Sure. So one of the strategies besides cycling strategy if we bring back to council is the road safety strategy. And one of the big points about road safety is it's a shared responsibility. So motorists have responsibility, Avenue Modes Transportation, the city, police, etc. So at the very basis, there are a set of laws that are in place at the provincial level to ensure there's a base level of safety. In addition to that law, for example, is Ellen's Law, which requirement that no matter what city street you're on, if you're passing a cyclist, you have to give a 1 meter full buffer to get back by that cyclist. That's the case no matter what type of cycling facility that you're on. So when we look at cycling facilities beyond the basic rights of people to use the street safely, it comes down to providing that backbone arterial network to get people around the city to their key destinations, just as how the arterial system works. So when we look in Move SJ with the cycling strategy, is we identify those arterial cycling networks and then identify, based on risk management levels, vehicle speed, vehicle volume, etc., what level of protection we should install based on that. For University Avenue, Move SJ indicates dedicated bike lanes provided for University Avenue. Based on that feedback, again, we're going slightly above and beyond with the addition of the bollards. But it starts with the laws of the land and moves up to what we can do to promote those other modes of transportation.
And just a couple of points on there. I know there's bollards and there's buffered lanes, sorry. What about these little Jersey barriers that I'm seeing? What do we refer to those as? I mean, it's not a full-size Jersey barrier. It's like this little tiny cement pad that goes on. Because in some ways I look at these bollards and I think it's just a pylon, right? And I can still drive through it. Those little Jersey barriers, like I'm sure they're a little more expensive, but then I'm sure also you can space them. So just a question about those.
Sure. So we're kind of doing an iterative process with this. We have to realize that there is snow in St. John as well during the winter time. These bollards, because they're easily installed, we can remove them seasonally for the winter months. One of the challenges with just putting these these concrete low medians is you're either leaving them there and having trouble plowing the street adequately, or you have to remove those as well as the bollards. So we're taking one additional step by installing the bollards. But we have to look at what appropriate level of protected cycling facility is on each street. Harbor Passage, for example. Harbor Passage is a separated facility available for cyclists and motorists, and actually provides a high level of operational maintenance for us because it's right off the street. So that's the challenge with those low concrete concrete medians is if you leave them there in the winter, you can't plow around them, otherwise you're removing them. So we are taking iterative approaches. We're seeing operationally how we can handle these, and we'll move up from there.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Director O'Reilly. Councillor McKenzie, you're up.
So what I'm looking at here, So what I'm looking at here is two-way bike lanes on both sides of the street from Bloom down to Sandy Point Road.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. At Bloom, we cross the crosswalk into the other bike lane. Now you've got two bikes going in the same lane, but it's a wide lane. Is that correct?
No. So I guess, can you put the screen back up for me? See if we're there. So if you're heading, I guess, from west to east, from Millage Avenue towards Sandy Point Road, the bike lane will start right at Millage Avenue. And it'll be a dedicated bike lane in that direction. Okay, so all the way from one end of the street to the other.
Correct.
Coming in the other direction, just before you get to Bloom Street, it'll convert from a dedicated protected bike lane to a shared lane. So cyclists will remain on the curb side and to continue their travel till they get to Millage Avenue.
Okay. And we're doing that because you've got to get in and out of Tim Hortons, and there's generally lineups going left into Tim Hortons from Village Avenue and right from. Did anybody ever approach business and say, is there some way you can realign your parking lot to line cars up on your own property? Because that's, to me, that's the issue.
Yeah, so first of all, consulted with Tim Hortons and the owners of that property, and again, very open, collaborative, at trying to find a solution. The problem with that particular one is that there is no space to put more vehicles off the street with this current orientation. So there is really no opportunities. What I can say going forward is whenever I do look at development come forward that include drive-throughs, we do a very thorough job at ensuring the future drive-throughs have adequate space off the street. But in this particular case, they really don't have a lot of opportunities to create a longer queuing length off the street to get them off.
Okay, thank you, Tim, for all your work on this.
Sure.
Councillor Radwan, you're up next, please.
Riley, I have a couple of small comments and a couple of quick questions. I'm in full support of this. I know that it's one of the top 5 reasons that people look to move into cities is from active transportation, which of course does include transit. Another thing that I did want to mention, I noticed in the packet that there was concern from one citizen about Ambulance New Brunswick traveling on University Avenue. As somebody who worked for the regional hospital for 9 years, I can say that the majority of time the ambulances are coming in on Tucker Park Road. So they're not usually using Ambulance New Brunswick to the full extent. But a couple quick questions. So I'm first of all just wondering what the cost of the crosswalk signage and installing that is.
With $10,000 per crosswalk.
Okay. And I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations. I'm totally with you. Safety of citizens is everybody's responsibility. If motorists or cyclists was looking for more information, education on how to be safe on the roads other than the motor vehicle branches, or anywhere else that, with your experience, Director, that you would recommend?
Sure. So I work closely with our communications department, and what we try to do, again, I get to talk to a lot of citizens, so I kind of hear what the common issues and concerns are, and we put out traffic tips to the community through our communications department. Issues like how do you cross the street safely as a pedestrian, those types of issues, we put those traffic tips out and help educate the community. We do at times work with schools as well. We have a safe crossing brochure which we've created, which actually provide the different schools to help educate students on how to cross the road safely as well. So we kind of go above and beyond that way and help get that message out.
Do we have some of that on our website that we could share?
Yes, again, the traffic tips are posted and remain on the website for a time, and I will double check about that brochure as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Hickey, over to you, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Director O'Reilly. Thanks for the presentation, Tim, and thanks for the work on this. It's been a long time coming, and I appreciate your due diligence. I just want to build on Councilor McKenzie's point. You know, he's been a pretty consistent advocate for the changes on this street for quite some time, and I know my grandmother has met his voicemail several times on this issue. I wonder our level of responsibility to deal with overflow traffic on a drive-through. Why are we responsible for that? I mean, the cars shouldn't be lined up on the outside of the road. That's not within traffic regulations.
Yeah. So the motorists decide to do it, first of all, right? If the drive-through is full, it's the motorist that decides to stop. So what we're trying to do is provide that balance of providing that level of service, but also regulation. So again, we have this no stopping zone, which will be signed, and it will have a bylaw in place that restricts stopping within that zone. So it's a combination of providing that level of service as well as appropriate regulations. So again, we are making a slight change to where the bike lane ends on one side of the road to make that addition.
So, and I understand the dynamics here. We're not talking about a huge group of cyclists. You know, we're talking about somewhere around the 0.8% of commuters cycle in St. John. But at the same time, we're trying to create a built environment for people to do it more. And that's what that, university campus uptown connection is all about. And that's what all of this strategy is about. So I'm just envisioning myself coming down University Avenue, east to west. What do I do once I hit that bumper of that person at the end of that no stopping zone? Where do I go?
Sorry, what was that now?
So if I'm on my bike and I'm heading east-west, and I'm coming up to that no stopping zone, what do I do once I hit that bumper of that car? Where do I go? Right, because there's going to be, consider it 8:30 in the morning. The road's lined up.
Yeah.
Where do I go?
As a motorist?
As a cyclist.
Well, as a cyclist, you're going to have that dedicated lane going from west to east.
But it ends, right? Like the bike lane ends east-west.
Yeah, you'll stay to the right-hand side of the roadway and go through as a cyclist. Yeah, as a shared lane.
So I'll have to navigate within the lanes of stop traffic there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I just.
And that's the case now.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. I understand it. Yeah. I understand that that's the case now, and it's not ideal conditions either way. I struggle with the precedent of saying if businesses aren't going to provide the space for these vehicles to stop. There's a whole bunch of other ones that do it too. They do it in front of my place on Waterloo Street, and it's incredibly dangerous, and it's not safe for motorists, cyclists, pedestrians alike. And rest assured, on my street, you tend to have some erratic pedestrians. I struggle with that. Like, is that now something that we're going to look at doing on Rossay Avenue and on Waterloo Street? Like, is this? I'm concerned with that precedent, I guess.
I can tell you generally that St. John is not the only municipality going through this. I mean, this is a challenge in other municipalities as well. And again, that's why it's a balanced transportation system. We try to find solutions that meet all those needs for people who are driving on the streets. But certainly in each one of those cases, where we have a couple of issues like that, we're going to treat them all individually and identify solutions for each one of those different situations.
Okay.
But St. John's not alone in that.
Okay. Thanks very much for your work on this. I appreciate it.
Councilor Ogden, please.
Tim, you mentioned a road diet. If we could sell one lane of the University Avenue, like perhaps Main Street and other places, and sell it to developers, the services are there, fire, police, water, sewer, everything, then we could increase our population, increase our taxes. And so when we talk about road diet, we already own that land, And just selling the land would give the city revenue, but you also give it future revenue with taxes and increase our population. We have a tax and population problem in this city. And couldn't we just do that and go from, say, Alpha Place to Sandy Point Road? I don't really see the necessity of having that many lanes. And
Okay, is there a question, though, in regards to the presentation, Councillor Ogden?
yes, I think that we should consider when we say road diet, that we should consider housing in these areas that we're trying to cut down the road diet on.
Thank you. All right, that's a point well taken. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. Look, Tim, I didn't want to open a can of worms there, okay? And I know you couldn't do it everywhere, and you say that going forward, we're going to try to accommodate. It just kind of bothered me that we're trying to solve a business's problem for them by using, city streets. And I get it. Everybody does it. So we'll just have to move forward and try to do better in the future with our developments. I will ask this, though. Should this not work out so well, are the bollards, bollards? They're easily removed? Because like anything else, you can say, to David's point, there's 8.8% people using bicycles. Well, there's probably more people driving than walking, but we have sidewalks. So I think we have to give this a chance, and I think we have to see where cyclists go in the city and sort of monitor it, and that's where we really put our efforts into trying to make the city accessible for cyclists. I certainly wouldn't say no to this. I would like to see it sort of a pilot project, and if in 2 years' time we don't see lots of cyclists going up and down, maybe they're going somewhere else that we need to spend more time on. So I'm definitely behind it. Okay, but I definitely know there's a lot more drivers than cyclists, like there's more cyclists than walkers, or more walkers than cyclists. So we have to try to accommodate everybody, and we have to give them a chance to get to know the routes there, and it's now safe to use before we say, oh, nobody's using it. Okay?
Thank you. City Manager?
Your Worship, thank you. Two very quick points to Council, and one in reply to Councillor McKenzie's last point. One of the things we are working on right now is an entire new performance management system that will collate data and drive our resource priority and decision-making moving forward. It's a continuous improvement tool. So to your point, absolutely. We will monitor this closely, and if adjustments need to be made, they need to be made. But another point that is in the report, but I think it bears repeating publicly, is a number of people say, well, just put up concrete barriers, make it a bike lane, and don't worry about plowing it. The issue we have in St. John is that St. John was constructed with a road network for vehicles, and all of our storm sewers are by the curb. So there is absolutely a requirement in wintertime for us to be able to plow those roads. Otherwise, our storm sewers clog up, and we all know what happens when storm sewers clog up. So that is one of the considerations as we move forward here and we decide what kind of bike lane we want. We do have to deal with the reality that we have winters here in St. John, and that's very much a challenge for us as we move forward. It's in the report, but I thought I'd just highlight it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to highlight a couple more things here. I'm sitting at some community consultations out there over the past couple of years. Moving of the bus stop is huge. I had some questions about that and just want to ensure the public that that is recommended here to the other side of Jean Coutu, because what would happen is people come whipping around the corner and the bus would be stopped. So that's very good. 2 signalized crosswalks are incredibly important. It'll help people get across the street without having to play Frogger to the hospital if they're getting off at University Avenue. But especially important is the one you can see right on the screen right there, where people walk over from Shannex to Jean Coutu to shop and get pharmaceuticals and things. And the fact that they have a shorter route to walk and that it'll be safer and signalized for all these things is incredibly important. So I know a lot of the conversation has been about the bike part of the changes, but those are incredibly important pedestrian safety changes. So just wanted to highlight those. And I'll finish off by moving the recommendation, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. A seconder, Councilor Hickey down there. On the question, all in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Good work, Director O'Reilly. I think the more we have these conversations, the more the vehicle driver will come to the conclusion that they have to share the road. Thank you. All right. Common Clerk, next item, please.
Yes, Your Worship. 12.3 is a staff report, Fundy Quay project update.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to hand this over to the Commissioner of Infrastructure and Utilities, Brent McGovern, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. We're before you this evening to provide you with a detailed update on the progress of the Fundy Quay project. This is an exciting project, as we all know, for the city of St. John that will bring further population and tax base growth to the city. A project that will add sea level rise protection, renew a seawall, extend harbor passage, renew a public space in Market Square, known as Loyalist Plaza, and further connect our pedway system. It will also open more sections of our beautiful St. John Harbor to the public. I wanted to highlight that we do have representation from the developer here this evening. Mr. Chris Elias is with us here this evening, and I thank him for joining us. Mr. Jeff Sear, Director of Strategic Real Estate Projects with Envision St. John, our agency for regional economic development growth, will take us through the progress update that has been made to date. And with that, over to you, Mr. Sear.
Thank you, Commissioner McGovern. Your Worship, members of council, it's a pleasure to be here this evening to provide an update on the Fundy Quay project. Just before I get started, just a reminder for some of you who were here last term, as well as kind of a highlight for some newer members. The Fundy Quay is one of 3 catalytic projects identified for the city, which includes also the Ashburn Interchange and the Central Peninsula Community Hub and School project, of which we're also quite optimistic about the prospects for in the coming months. Overall, the Fundy Quay project is really a transformational project for our waterfront to bring new uses and activities, as well as public amenities to the water. This evening, we're providing a high-level update. What we've accomplished since the last time we were here at the funding launch. Seawall construction is currently underway. We've completed the first phase of public engagement. Both our site works project, which is soil remediation and site regrading, and our public space projects. Concept design is well underway or near completion. The private sector development is in the pre-application stages, and design and engineering work is moving forward. And fortunately, we also have received timeline extensions from the federal government. We had previously warned of a risk that timelines were very aggressive and may not be realistic. So this provides us with the adequate time to complete the infrastructure work for the project. In your report and presentation, we include some history. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but at a high level, I just want to point out on this first slide here, 75 years ago, this site was water. It was filled in for the construction of the Coast Guard base in the 1950s. And this really plays a big role in the history of the site because it's very challenging for development. We've seen a number of false starts in the mid-2000s. This is another one that never made the light of day. We also saw the museum project fall through as a result of some challenging costs, well, budgetary reasons. So in 2019, following the cancellation of that most recent project, we set forward on trying to find a new path forward for the Fundy Quay and to bring this site to life. We tried to learn from these past lessons and really to come to an agreement and a plan that would help to overcome these challenges and move the project forward. The first step was selecting a developer. We had a procurement process that was led by our predecessor agency, Develop St. John, working with the city, as well as other community partners, and the Alliance Management Group was selected as a successful proponent. They're a local team. They were able to phase the development, which allows them to bring on density over time, which helps to address some of the challenges and move the project forward. The next step was to come to an agreement to get this document papered, which we had never successfully done so in the first couple of attempts at the project. So there's two phases to the agreement. The first is an option agreement. This gave us, the city and Envision St. John, time to secure the infrastructure funding to make the site viable, as well as to undertake the work. And it gave the developer time to plan and to move their project forward. From the developer, we received a $250,000 non-refundable payment to provide confidence for the city that the developer is serious and committed and has skin in the game. At the completion of the option period, it moves into a ground lease that really is a requirement for them to buy the site eventually. So this would be the developer's option to enter into at the end of this period. However, they have put down non-refundable payments. Again, it's a 25-year ground lease. There's a requirement that it must be bought at the end of that 25-year period, but they're able to buy it at any point during that process and really incentivized to do so earlier. When they enter the lease, the payment structure works. There's a base payment of about $175,000 a year. There's a forgivable payment, which is an incentive. If they move forward the development and achieve the densities that we'd like to see, that part of the lease payment eventually declines, and we generate significantly more revenue and tax base. And in year 6, they begin a $25,000 maintenance contribution to help the city maintain infrastructure in the future, and that's indexed to inflation. When they do get to the point that, that they opt to buy the property, again, depending on the amount of density that they bring, the price is incentivized if they generate significant tax revenue to the city. So we really went with a high value and a low value. If they don't achieve the performance results, they pay a high price for the land. If they do achieve the tax revenue that was desired at the time of putting this deal together, they would bring the price down to comparable to some of the past deals that we had, but a little bit higher. So that provides a fairly strong business case for the city to undertake some of the infrastructure construction. So in terms of that, we have a $6.5 million valuation as the base. That provides annual lease payments of $250,000. And we anticipate at the potential full build out of the current vision, somewhere in the magnitude of $2 to $3 million of property tax revenue for the city on an annual basis. So in terms of where we are today with the option agreement, we've concluded year 1, and the developer has met all the requirements from it, and we've entered into year 2. And we're moving forward now with the infrastructure construction, which you're beginning to see. I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but what are the components of this project? Will include soil remediation, addressing contaminated soils, infilling the site, raising the site, because we are repairing the seawall, but we're also raising it, so we're going to need to fill the site in behind it. And then it also includes public space, so the reimagining and reinvigoration of Loyalist Plaza and the extension of Harbor Passage around the edge, as well as a pedway connection between the new development and Market Square. So in terms of what's the federal share and what's the municipal share of the overall project, so it's a $27 million project. We've leveraged about $18 million from other levels of government. We came before council with the proposed budget for the additional components. Previously, before the development was moving forward, there was a roughly $5 million seawall repair and raising project that the city was undertaking. So the additional $4.1 million in city capital that was brought forward really expands the waterfront access and provides a development-ready site, which really is the key to unlocking the revenue from the development. So that's the high-level background. What I want to pivot to right now is what can you expect to see in the coming months, in the next couple of years in terms of construction, with a focus on the public infrastructure and what we're doing to meet the timelines and the objectives of our agreement with the developer as well. And I will say tentatively, these are still preliminary. There are items that may be out of our control that could change this, but right now this is the target. So this summer, what's currently underway is the first phase of the seawall. It's the south section, and that will continue to the fall until the completion of that phase. While that work is happening, we will be continuing the design and engineering for the site works project, as well as continuing the design and engagement on the public space project. So come fall of 2021, what we'll be looking at is the seawall project will move to the northern section of the wall. The south section of the Fundy Quay site will begin the site works project, so soil remediation and site regrading. And we are looking at a tender for Loyalist Plaza in the fall, but mainly for salvage, demolition, and regrading. So getting that part of the site ready so that we can get out of the ground early on the actual public space construction and really try and focus as much as we can on the shoulder season to limit impacts on the businesses of the area. So by winter and going through to summer in 2022, we would provide in red here, the first section of developable area. If we can provide more, we will. But the minimum amount that we're looking to provide is enough to facilitate the first phase of the Fundy Quay development in 2022, which are the tentative plans of the developer. If we need to finish the site works, that would happen early in the year. The seawall construction in 2022 will continue to the fall in the north section. And Loyalist Plaza construction will begin in spring of 2022. By fall of 2022, we would have turned over the entirety of the first phase of site works. The seawall construction is planned to be completed, and Loyalist Plaza construction is intended to be completed and operational at some time at the end of the construction season. And the final phase of site works will begin in the fall of 2022 when the northern section of the seawall is completed. So that brings us to 2023 and the completion of the public infrastructure component. So at this point, we'll have turned over the entirety of the development site to the developer, and we'll have regraded and changed the grading of the entirety of the Fundy Quay property, which will allow for us to extend harbor passage around the edge, as well as potentially installing the pedway connection from Market Square to the future development at Fundy Quay. So that's the timeline for public infrastructure. And we continue to work with the developer as they progress their plans and continue through their design and engineering phase. Now, before I conclude, I do want to just highlight a few important considerations and topical items. So one is, just to reiterate again, we did receive the extension on our funding for infrastructure from Infrastructure Canada. So this was a really significant project risk, which we've been able to remove. The boardwalk businesses and potential impacts to the boardwalk. This is going to be a very critical one for us. So we've had regular communications. We actually have conversations with the leadership of the boardwalk businesses on about a weekly basis. They've been thoroughly engaged in providing input and making sure that new design can work with a lot of the programming and activities that they bring to the space. And we'll be looking at constructing these tender documents so that they take into account how to phase construction to mitigate impacts on the businesses. Another one is active transportation. Again, this is not a solution to all problems, but the extension of harbor passage is going to consider all modes of transportation, and it will help to provide another route to at least avoid a fairly busy and complicated intersection at the foot of King Street. And the last one is diversity and inclusion. So engagement is well underway with our First Nations communities. Beyond just the typical requirements, the federal government funding contracts. So our landscape architect is currently working with communities to try and find good ways to incorporate educational as well as recognition items in the design to celebrate and recognize the history of First Nations communities in St. John and on our harbor front. They're also looking to do research to tell a more diverse story of St. John's history in our waterfront. And one kind of concept that's being considered, and it's a great opportunity to kind of test this with this council, is the idea with a new design and a new space. Perhaps it may be an opportunity for a new brand for the space that's Loyalist Plaza, and to consider something that may be a little bit more inclusive to the variety of residents of St. John, whether they be First Nations, newcomers, or other visible minority groups. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Jeff. So this is a presentation to bring us up to speed on what's been happening, where they are at this point in time. I love all your considerations. They're very comprehensive. But I'll open up the floor, if you don't mind, for a few questions from councillors. So the first one up is Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Jeff, for this awesome presentation. Do we have any timelines, or has the developer on the Fundy Quay project, have they put together any RFPs on who might be taking some of those commercial assets, or do we know when that might be happening? I just know there's a lot of interest in the community about what types of businesses and what types of things are going to be in there residentially and things like that. I'm just curious about the timelines. Thanks.
There have been documents that have been provided to the city as part of the due diligence from year one. So that include business plans and phasing plans. Doesn't get into the details of what may be some of the businesses located in some of the buildings, but more of those details will likely come out as they start to move through the land use approvals process. So those are things that are in the works.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McKenzie, please.
Phase project, and phase 2, I guess, is going to be the first phase of this, correct? Because you're still going to be, phase 1 is where you're going to start the seawall next year, and we're working on the seawall in phase 2 right now. Is that right?
Yeah, basically the Fundy Quay portion for the site infrastructure, both seawall and site regrading, have been broken into 2 phases. And the reason is so that we can finish the first half for the end of the year, so that we can get the developer going next year. And then we'll move to the second phase in the northern half. It's all really to ensure that we deliver the site and get development moving faster.
Get it moving. So when, I guess my question to you is, when are we going to see cranes in the air down there for,
I don't want to speak for the developer. Tentatively, what was discussed publicly is the goal is to deliver the site for development to begin in 2022.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's just that you said it, there's been, so much anticipation of this, right? That we're just, can't wait. Anyway, thank you.
We can't wait, Jeff, and we want to make sure something is fantastic before 2025 when we're done. So that's what we're aiming for. Anyway, thank you very much. And so the recommendation tonight is for receive and file. So I have a mover with Councillor McKenzie, seconder with Councillor Hickey. All in favor? Contrary? Motion passed. Thank you very much again. Thank you, Chris, Elias, for coming along as well.
Your Worship, next item on the agenda is a staff report that was removed from the consent agenda. It is now item 14.1, and it was item 5.4 with respect to public hearing date 85 to 87 and 91 King Street.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Any questions? All in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Okay. Common Clerk?
Yes, next item, Your Worship, 15.1 on your agenda, under general correspondence. We have a letter from D. James with respect to use of red light cameras. There is a staff recommendation to receive for information.
Second. All right, on the question. Oh, sorry. First, okay, Councillor Norton, are you speaking? Just going to move the, okay.
Move the recommendation, I believe.
Thank you.
Councilor.
Councillor Harris?
I motion that this be
Point of order, there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we've got a motion. So what happens is we have a motion on the floor, so.
Your Worship, the motion on the floor would take precedence.
So we would vote on the motion on the floor.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm still believing this. I'm not but anyway. I would like this to be referred to the city manager for recommendation because the the author, Mr. James, specifically asked for council to take action on this, not for it to simply be filed. And I understand that there is legislative pieces to consider. And so within that, I would like to see that come back at a time when those legislative pieces have been able to be considered and for a report to be made for council. This is a sensitive topic. We have had people on this
Okay.
recently who died, so from the streets and whatnot, and there's been quite a detailed list of situations here outlined by the author.
All right, so we've got a motion on the floor. I'm just going to get a bit of direction from the clerk. The clerk.
So it sounds like we've had a motion to refer, so if there's a, that would take precedence if there is a seconder.
Did you want to speak, city manager, or is there a
Not at the-
seconder? Okay, so on the referral motion then, that will take precedent over the motion that's on the floor. But that referral motion needs a seconder to be live. Does it have a seconder? Calling once? Okay, so that motion isn't gonna, that's not a motion. So we'll go back to our original motion?
Yes.
So our original motion. Recommendation, okay. Okay, question on the original motion? No questions? You have a question, Councilor McKenzie?
I understand where the council's coming from, but on something like this, I mean, we get calls all the time to try to get police surveillance in those areas. What the drivers are doing is against the Motor Vehicle Act. They're not allowed to do it. I don't think that, tying up staff time to try to, come up with another way of policing it is going to help. I think what we need to do is we need to make those calls, Councilor, to the police department and say, Pugsley Avenue, Beaverbrook Avenue, the speeders, and we got to deal with it. We get this a lot, and we have to put the responsibility on the right department. I guess is what I'm getting at. So that's why I'm suggesting that we follow staff's recommendation. And, I've talked to them already. I'll talk to them again.
Okay, thank you. City manager, your light's flashing. Are you?
Your worship, members of council, perhaps I can clarify this to a degree here. It was our recommendation that this be received for information at this time. The reason being is because the bill has just received royal assent. None of the statutes or regulations associated with the bill have yet to be developed. We don't even know, for example, where the revenues will be going, who's going to be responsible for paying, what sort of regulations may be in place as to where they can and cannot go, et cetera. Therefore, we believe it is premature to refer anything to the city manager at this point. The recommendation of receive and file indicates that we note the observations. And clearly, if this legislation at some point in the future will be needed to be addressed by this council, and we will, of course, bring forward our analysis and recommendations at that time. It's just premature at this point.
Okay, so I'll call the question then. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. All right, Common Clerk, you're up next.
Yes, Your Worship. So the final item is item 18 on your agenda, and it has a staff report attached to it. It's entitled "The Process for Selection of Deputy Mayor," and probably would be best to just deal with the report first. So the report is in response to a recent change in the procedural bylaw, which changed the process of the selection of a deputy mayor. The tradition in St. John had been to select a deputy mayor with the highest number of votes in the quadrennial municipal election. And with this bylaw update, it allows council to select from amongst all its 10 councillors as deputy mayor. So a process was requested from council in terms of how would it go about selecting the deputy mayor. And you'll see contained in the report is a staff recommendation that should council have numerous individuals who are interested in this position, a balloting system would be used, which would allow council to select the candidate with the most support. And just as a reminder, the role of the deputy mayor is the exact same role as a councillor, with the exception of if the mayor is absent or if the mayor's office is vacant, the deputy mayor would acquire all the powers of the office of the mayor. And in essence, they would be doing what your worship's doing here tonight. They'd be chairing all the meetings. You'll see the list outlined in the report of what those duties are according to the relevant legislation, the Local Governance Act. The report is recommending a receive and file, as it just outlines what the procedure would be. So, your worship, I believe it would be appropriate to vote on the report, and after that has been completed, it would be appropriate for those council members interested in serving as deputy mayor to express their interest, and they would be given an opportunity to say a few words.
Okay, thank you. So the first order of business then will be to receive and file the report. So okay, did I have a mover on that? Okay, and mover and a seconder. Are there any questions for the clerk? All right, all in favor? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Joanna. Oh, Councilor
One
Kelly.
quick question, if this is a private ballot or a public?
Oh, yeah, sorry, it does say in the report, so the recommendation is a secret ballot. However, it has to be done in open session committee of the whole. So the reason we would recommend committee of the whole is just less restrictive procedurally. Now, this ballot does not bind you. It simply would be used as a tool to arrive at the person who has the most support. It still requires council to then move into open session of council and take a vote of council. It would require a majority vote to appoint the deputy mayor, and it is a 4-year term.
And that vote is open in council.
Councilor Ogden, please.
Would it be electronic or on paper?
It would be on paper, Councillor. And there could be multiple rounds depending. It is described in the report, but depending on how the vote went, how many candidates there were, the person with the lowest number would be dropped, and both the clerk and the general counsel would assist council by being responsible for counting the ballot and announcing who the individual receiving the most votes was.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we take the vote? So all in favor of this process? Just to receive and file, sorry. Aye, okay, and anyone against? Okay, motion carried. Okay, so now, am I passing that back to you?
Your worship, so now I would suggest that individuals that are interested in serving as deputy mayor would press their button on their mic, and then the chair could recognize them, and they'd be given an opportunity to outline why they wish to serve.
All right. So first up is Councillor McKenzie with his 3 minutes of good reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make a couple of points. Speak on availability, first of all. In 2013, I retired from Canada Post. It was a choice that I made because I got elected to council in 2012, and I really wanted to spend more time in the neighborhoods and being on committees. And so I made the choice. I retired. I found that was more fulfilling in my situation than staying at work, and I was blessed to be able to do it. I've had the pleasure of working with 2 deputy mayors. Shelley Reinhardt, who is a professor at UMBSJ, was deputy mayor from 2012 to 2016, and she worked with council and Mel Norton, and Mel's a lawyer here in St. John, and he continued to practice law, and Shelley helped him out a lot. And the council was a really good council. But Shelley actually had an office in City Hall because she did a lot of work. And so that was one one end of the scenario. Then the other end of the scenario, we had the council of 2016, 2021, and we had Shirley McAlery. Shirley was an excellent deputy mayor. She was mayor at one time, a couple of times actually. But Don Darling was a hands-on, full-time mayor. So Shirley wasn't necessarily as busy as Shelley was, but Shirley would be given those last-minute opportunities to, represent council when the mayor was double-booked or out of town or whatever. So there's two different scenarios there. I think what my understanding is we want to try to go down the middle of the road on this council. And I thought, well, I've got some experience because prior to getting elected to council, some of you know, certainly you know, that I was the deck chair for the District Education Council for 2 terms. So I've been used to running meetings and interacting with people and getting things done. The other experience I bring in, during my career, believe it or not, I was the president of a union, and when I was very young, and I quickly moved up through the ranks, and when I retired, I was a member of the management team. So I have that experience of dealing with unions, management, and trying to be a level head in between. At the end of the day, I guess I would be supportive and happy with whoever gets to be deputy mayor. It was never something that was on my bucket list. But I think that having all that experience behind me in my career in the school board and in council, I think, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to not put my name forward, especially where I have the opportunity and time to do it. So I'll put that out there. I hope that I've shown what I've made of over the last 9 years here at council and lifetime with other ventures. And if I get the support, I would really appreciate it. And if not, I'm going to work 100% with whoever does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Norton, you're up next with 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Give us your pitch.
Short of submitting my CV, I think council has a difficult decision, and one of the things we look for with our ABCs is to check the boxes on a skills matrix. How well they are able to chair a meeting, how well they are able to earn the trust of council, represent the public, chair meetings, and represent you in the absence of our chief magistrate. So there's a number of things beyond just availability. It's the individual that will sit in that chair seat and represent you in our worship's absence. So whether we're the deputy is the head of a municipal council, presiding over meetings, whether it's to provide leadership in her absence in concert with our city manager and staff, and to represent the municipality at official functions, or to carry out the duties of her head office. I trust that my reputation and my 9 years serving on council will be something for you to consider. And remembering that as we take our oath of office, it's not to represent any one particular ward, but the best interests of all of the city of St. John. So although we're cheerleaders for our respective communities, the decisions that I made tonight in support of a bike lane on University Avenue, it's not lost on me that we stretch from the Cozy Lake Road all the way out to Laurenville. And in order to expand the reach of the mayor's office, it's important to have a 2CI, so to speak, that is able to do that and connect with those folks that are able to leverage and help us reach our full possibilities here in the City of St. John. So, other than that, Council, thanks for your consideration, your sober second thought. And I understand through the Common Clerk's office that a formal vote is a week away, and obviously happy to answer questions, but you have certainly qualified individuals, and Councillor McKenzie is certainly one of those. So thanks for your consideration, and thanks for the process.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And certainly I'd preface my comments and to Councillor Norton's point, I would be thrilled to work with either councillor, whatever councillor ends up filling the role of deputy mayor. I think I see this role as filling a few different options. Certainly, it's one of providing leadership to council, but it's also one of providing complement to the mayor and providing complement to the strategy and the vision that is held around this horseshoe. And I think over the past term, I've exemplified that, and I've worked to ensure that that vision is clear to the public, and that level of engagement is there, and that level of insight is there, both around the horseshoe, but also in public. I think when it comes to availability, I've made sure that I've built my professional career around one that is as accessible as possible to this job, because I'm incredibly passionate about it. I'm incredibly passionate about making sure that this council can do the work that we need to do. And to that light, I've forgone many opportunities professionally in order to continue supporting this. I think I've been a leader around this table. I want to continue to support council's vision forward, and ultimately support the mayor. Support the mayor in making sure that our presence is represented, whether it's at flag raisings or events or whatever they may be. And I'm proud that the mayor said that committed to working with the rest of this council, as well as that vision as we move forward. I think also I want to make sure that this council is making sure that we're engaged and committed to the work that's being done online as well, making sure that we're staying engaged on social media, making sure that we're engaging with our public as much as possible and remaining as open and as accessible to that commentary as possible. I've prided myself on making sure that over my tenure on council that has been a priority of mine, whether it's engaging in debate or engaging in conversation around making sure that it's known of the positive vision that is being supported from the folks around this table. I think my last point would be that I would offer some complementary skills to leadership around the table. I want to make sure that that the dynamic that is seen around this table is also seen in the deputy mayor's chair and in our leadership of council. And I hope to bring that to that role, and I hope that the rest of hopefully next Monday you'll see that as well. But again, I would certainly be supportive of whoever ends up filling that role, and putting my name forward for the reasons I've mentioned, but also just for profound willingness and commitment to serve the city and to serve the vision that I think we're all here to support. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. 3 excellent candidates, all bring different skills and strengths to the table. Stay tuned. Next week, June 21, you'll have the answer. So it's going to be good. So now we've finished the formal agenda, and unless there are any objections, I'd like to ask the city manager to just give us an important announcement and an update on the availability of vaccines, if you would, please. Thank you.
Your worship, members of council, I'm very pleased to announce that we've been working with regional health and regional EMO on trying to make access to vaccinations in the city of St. John easier and more readily available, certainly to our citizens within the priority neighborhoods. Details will follow tomorrow morning, but I thought I would provide an advance notice this evening. It would appear that we will have 3 back-to-back days of walk-in, no appointment required vaccinations at Exhibition Park from 10 in the morning till sometime in the evening, probably around 7 p.m. And literally, it's easy. Just show up and you get a needle in your arm. More importantly, we are also coordinating a robust transit system to get people there. And it will not be just the regular routes. We are also going to develop direct routes, no transfers, and no costs. Anybody who wants to get on one of these buses to get to Exhibition Park can do so free of charge. And then, of course, there is a return bus to bring them back. All these details will be coming out tomorrow, but I thought it would be useful to simply announce that this evening. Again, exact dates and times to follow, but it's looking really good for this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone tonight. Oh, Councilor Lowe?
Is that for just first shots? Because there's a deadline, like, that's important.
Yes. This program is designed for first dose vaccinations.
Okay, thank you. So we're done for the evening. Thank you to my council colleagues and to staff. We've had a very successful first meeting, and so I will need a motion to adjourn. And second, and all in favor? Contrary? All right, away we go back